pornography is something that I hear quite a lot from typically young males, but sometimes young females or even older females who say that they can see themselves trying to resist the desire to go look at it. And it almost doesn't feel like a desire anymore. They're sort of just in a kind of a compulsion that is almost unconscious, but they're just aware of the fact that they're
like an eating disorder.
Like an eating disorder. They're doing it. They know they shouldn't be doing it, and they can't help themselves. And we could think about two ways to attack this if one believes it's a real concern, and they certainly do. So I do. I would be open if I had or do. Pornography has not been my thing, and I don't struggle with it. But when I hear from these people, it's so clear that they're asking, is it the prevalence of pornography out there? Or is it something really broken in them? Like, are they broken? But I don't know that I would say, after having the discussion we've had thus far, that they're broken. It seems to me that it's like as you said, it's the manifestation of one part of their, it's one personality within them.
Well, and it's been compulsively rewarded. So, you know, when you see yourself moving towards the culmination of a desired goal, a dopamine, that's accompanied by dopamine release, okay? And so two things, you know this, but everybody who's listening might not. There's two elements to that dopamine release. One is pleasure, but the other is that the dopamine, imagine that there are circuits activated as you're acting. What the dopamine does is increase the probability that the circuits that were activated just before the positive experience happened grow. Okay, so now if you're engaged with pornography and that culminates in successful sexual satiation, which it can, that's what masturbation does, then the whole personality that's oriented toward that set of stimuli is going to come to dominate. It's very much like an addiction, except it's you know, there's been work done with generally simpler animals on these phenomena called super stimuli. I think it's stickleback fish where this was first observed. So males, I hope I get this right, but I've got it approximately right. I believe it's male sticklebacks they're very aggressive towards other male sticklebacks. And the reason they're aggressive is because the other male sticklebacks have a red dot on their bellies. So they don't like red dots at all. And so you can really enrage a stickleback with a red dot. And if you use a red dot that's a little bigger and a little brighter than the typical red dot, you get a super stimulus. It's virtually irresistible to the stickleback. And it's weird because the maximal activation is produced by a stimulus that they wouldn't see in nature. It slightly exceeds, that's exactly what pornography does. It's a super stimulus, right? And it's not surprising that young males in particular are susceptible to that because male sexuality in human beings is very visually oriented. Very. And a lot of our brain is visual, way more than virtually every other animal, certainly every other primate and every other mammal. And so we have a situation where any 13-year-old boy can see more hyper-attractive, super stimulus women in one day than the most successful man who ever lived 100 years ago would have ever seen in his whole life. Yeah, well, that's like an evolutionary, radical ecological transformation. And it's worse because it's easily accessible, so it takes no work, right? So not only is it a super stimulus, it's one that's at hand, so to speak.
And the analog in the food world would be sugar. Highly palatable, highly processed food.
Yeah, sugar-fat combination.
You go into the other day. I went into a gas station to use the restroom because I was traveling home for Thanksgiving, and I looked around and I thought, this isn't a convenience store. This is a pharmacy.
Right.
Everything that had chocolate also seemed to have caffeine and color. Every drink seemed to combine not just sugar, but also caffeine and some other things that would provide stimulants. And you've got nicotine.
Energy drinks.
And these things on their own aren't necessarily bad, any one of these one elements in low enough doses, in frequent use, et cetera. But maybe sugar being the one that clearly I think deserves deeper investigation, right? But it just occurred to me that
difference between manufacturing sugar and manufacturing cocaine. I mean, you take something that's available in its natural form in relatively low concentrations and purify it. I mean, coca leaves, the natives used coca leaves forever as a mild stimulant, didn't seem to cause them any trouble, but that's way different than cocaine, right? And sugar has arguably the same pathological properties.
Well, I didn't think we were going to go here, but I think it's extremely appropriate and important that we do. So I know that you followed what is essentially an elimination diet for a number of years. You eat meat, right? I eat meat, vegetables, fruit, and some starches, unrefined starches. In any event, one thing that I think is absolutely clear from following a clean diet, so to speak, of any kind,